And I remember as soon as we settled down, I was laying on a concrete floor somewhere in Antwerp, and that first bomb hit. Now, I'd heard a lot of bombs in my life, but I never heard one that's so loud. And it kind of shook us. And then we found out what these things were. They were all V1s flying over. And that was the first one. But then it started happening every day at night. I mean, and actually you get used to it. But you do see a lot of destruction. Whole block would come down especially when one of them V2s hit. And I walked out on them one time. I couldn't have been over 2 blocks down. If I had been slower, it had to get me too. I don't know why we didn't pay too much attention. Didn't think about it. I think we lost about 27 guys in my company up there. I don't forgot how many were injured. Man, it was a ton of dynamite. I think it was a ton that said that. And it wasn't no powerful motor. You know, it wasn't showed it in there. And it put along. It wasn't a fast thing. When they crash, that's when it would go off. And I mean, tell you things, like I said, when one hit, if you hit it in the city, the whole block would practically be destroyed. One day, it was a Sunday, I believe, a couple of sergeants came to me and wanted me to go to that movie. I'd seen the movie in the United States, I think. And I was kind of always wanting to take a little nap when I got a chance, so I told them, no, I don't think so. So 7 of them went. And about 20 minutes later, I was laying on my couch, and the bomb hit the theater. I jumped out of the bunk and ran up, and the sight I saw, God almighty. That bomb had hit the stadium, it hit that theater, and there was plaster. And all the dead people in there had white, like a ghost story. And you'd be amazed how you saw the bodies up on balconies and things. And why I didn't go, I ain't never figured out.
You were telling me a story about shooting at a enemy plane.
Right.
Now, tell me about
that. This was a jet. I had never seen one. This was the first one I ever saw. He was coming up a canal in Antwerp, and I was behind a brick wall, which was safety, I figured. So he was flying. He couldn't have been over 100 feet high, doing about 600 miles an hour. And so I had my gun, and I just shot. I know I ain't come close to hitting it because that bullet wasn't fast enough to get to him. I could see him just plain as day. I could see his head and everything just plain as day. He's so close. Now, I don't believe in no war. I don't believe in it no more. Of course, I know we have to have them, but when I think back over all those kids that got killed, I said to myself, for what? What? You have them every day? Keep on having more. You wonder why, but I know one thing, I wouldn't want to go back. And then
Right. But that was a necessary war.
Oh, yeah, had to do it. Had to do it. And I guess these wars today, I don't know. But we're getting to the point now where you're going to do a war with a push button. Now, they going to get you killed. Anybody. And atomic stuff and all. Dangerous world.
Right.
I don't know.
just a carefree life. We ran around without our shoes in the summertime, chickens. Everything was a family affair. Pig killing time was real interesting because farmers would congregate together. Within a 4-mile radius, you'd have farmers coming in. I can remember my uncles coming in for pig killing. If the weather was cold enough, Dad would call them in. And he had a pig killing spot right behind this house, halfway to the pig pen. And my brother got those scalding tubs that's in the ground. So my father would scald for the community because he had all the equipment. But it had to be cold, that meat had to be hung, and he'd hang that meat in that garage out there overnight and let it drain. She'd make scrapple where you take the hog head, you use all the parts, and the chitlins. My mother raised chickens and she sold eggs. And my father bought his first piece of land down the road here, 40 acres. He bought it with money my mother had saved from chicken eggs. I would go out there in that tree by the road because the branches was low. I'd climb up the tree and and the bookmobile would come around in the summer, and I'd get a whole handful of bucks, and I'd be up in that tree, and they'd be looking for me to do work, wash dishes. I'd be in the tree hiding.
And read.
Reading books. I love to read. My grandfather could sing songs, and my only regret is he was had a deep voice, and he was a comedian, a self-made comedian, and he could sing stories to us as children, and he could mesmerize us, and none of us thought to record any of it. Not only would he sing over there, he would do one-man shows up at Life at School for the community, just like a Eddie Murphy stand-up comedy. I've heard my aunts and different older people years ago talk about Morton Turrell and the one-man shows he would give. But he was just a character. He was just a character all around. But that's how he made his living, was in that store. And during the day, he sold groceries. And my grandfather ran a general merchandise store, but he ran a beer joint. That's where this store came from. And this was his second store. The first one was a wooden structure. People from 3 counties around would come here to party on Friday and Saturday nights, for real.
Wow.
And old people people that I run into who know our family, they still talk about Morton Turrell's store. They will come from Culpeper. They will come from the Fredericksburg area, Spotsylvania. That store would hold at least 200 on any Saturday night. And it would park all in the fields, all up and down this road, at least 200. It was a Dewdrop Inn. They'd be out back shooting crap. He had 2 wooden toilets in the back, up on the hill back there. But between the inside and the outside, and Mother would make us come in the house, because sometimes they get to shooting over there. They act crazy, they get drunk. But he had his ABC license up until the day he died. Honey Woolfolk was over there selling White Lightning. Honey Woolfolk was from Spotsylvania. Back then, White Lightning was quite predominant here, so they weren't buying bought liquor. They were drinking moonshine.
Which one?
And my dad found a still on this place one time. He took an axe down there and broke it up. So I don't know who locally had that, but my grandfather bought beer. He had a license, and he did beer. He didn't do liquor. But liquor was around everywhere. My grandfather organized and was responsible for some of the biggest baseball teams in this area. And a couple of the guys that my father would oversee and manage the teams, they would play bumpers. This was called Unionville. They'd play bumpers. They might go down to Pates, Virginia, and play Pates and go over to Culpeper. One of the guys went on to play for the Negro Leagues. Two of the guys that played under my father went on to play for the actual Negro Leagues. And he did construction. Massaponic Church, you came right by it on 629. My grandfather built that church. He's the builder. And Shady Branch Fork Baptist Church, he built that as well. Wow. So he was a carpenter, and we still have some of his pews. He did it all. He made the pews for the church. He did the carvings, and I have pictures of some of his work from years ago. He was very, very talented. But my father was a farmer, and my mother stayed home and raised children. And when we went to college, when it was time for college, he went to work in a factory at night in order to make additional funds, and she did too. So they were still farming by day and working in factories at night so they could send us to school. And my father was big in the Democratic Party here. Him and my grandmother, you could not go to school and have him support you in college if you did not vote. And he used to make us come home from Petersburg back home to make sure we voted. Don't be afraid to express yourself. Be respectful. Love your neighbor. Love people. You know, embrace culture, embrace other people's culture, embrace the diversity, but be yourself. If something is not right, don't be afraid to stand up if you have to stand alone. Because that's something that was reared in me as a child. If you know in your heart and you're coming from a positive, righteous place, don't be afraid to be a loner.
Spanish, Italian, some Greek stuff, Spanish, Yiddish. I thought I'd never learn German, but it came real easy. But Korean was a little bit different. Especially when I got into this special ops. That's different. It's Army, but it's altogether different.
Yes, I can imagine.
And then they say, well, this is what we need. We'll just send somebody to meteorology school, learning you got to halfway predict the weather, learn about all the clouds and the winds and all that stuff, which is very good, especially when you're in a place like down in Argentina. The closest town is 700 miles, 3,000 miles from Antarctica. So there is no radio. Did you ever go to jump school? Yes, I went to jump school. Did you go to Halo school? I went to Halo school.
Now tell me about Halo School.
Oh, no, that's the good school. For instance, you jump from 40,000 feet up. Okay, if we're going to jump in CBS, we would leave the aircraft at 40,000 feet higher at Zions Crossroads. That's where we would probably exit the aircraft to get to go down to the CBS over here in Orange. That's how far we'll just track in, go out at 40,000 feet up higher, and everybody goes their own way and holding their hands and land.
So you free fall?
Free fall. And then you can guide yourself. If you're going too fast and you pull, go this way or go around, make circles and come around till you get ready to drop. So it's very safe. Very seldom anybody in free fall get hurt. I don't think we lost but 2 people that I knew. I went to Tokyo, and we went over there to salvage some parachutes. Okay, so we got over there. We could be over there for 40 some days. So we get over there and open up these containers. And I opened them up, and guess what was inside? I looked at it, it said, Orange Silk Mill, Orange, Virginia. I am so glad that they did not try to let somebody use them, because silk wouldn't have never opened up. They had 90 of them over there. They had built in 42 and 43. Somebody from Orange sold the Army these parachutes. They wouldn't have worked. I got a couple of tree jumps down in Panama.
Where you got hung up in a tree?
Well, it just deterred the Panama's got a little small drop zone. Ain't big as not. And most of the time, at least 1 or 2 people go in the tree.
How did you get out?
Oh, got your knife, reach down to like it, pull your knife out and cut yourself out. But you got to look around to see what's supporting you. If it's weight on it, you don't want to cut that one. I was with some guys, 6, 7, 8, 12 years. Especially on the Mekong Delta. It's in Vietnam, and then Laos.
Now, were you dressed in uniforms, or were you dressed as civilians?
Never a uniform. No, we always dressed in local attire.
Wow.
So that you got to learn the language, how to bow and do.
Were you ever captured?
No way. No, well, we pretty much knew where we were going and escape routes. No 2 people go the same way. Never sleep in the same area. They'll kill us all. No smokers and no snorers.
Yeah,
Those are the 2 things. Yeah, I got my leg twisted. No, but that's when that bomb got hit with that thing, knocked me out. And I woke up, I thought I was just out for a day. I know it was on a Tuesday. I thought it was like Wednesday or Thursday. No, it was a week later. I said, where am I? I knew where I was at because it was in Japan and they were speaking Japanese.
But you were hit by a bomb?
Yeah, got hit in the back with a satchel charge or something hit me. If I hadn't had that on, I'd have been dead back, and I'd have been gone. I was trying to get up. He said, oh no, Sarge, you can't get up. They was all in there looking. I had a scar on my head, my arm, my leg. I looked down at his leg here was, they didn't turn around the other way. They said, no, they didn't know which way to turn it. I said, well, be easy on it. I was getting good service, so that's one thing I can say about the medical people. They will send you to the best of the best. We had teams to go in there, but they wasn't combat teams. Most of the time we was 12, no more than 12 people. We went in there for things to send to the people back. You tell me what you need, and we tell it, we go get it for you. School, 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 school.
Well, it was a good-sized village. It had 3 stores, a bank, mill, Rapidan Milling Company. It was a pretty good-sized village. A bank in Rapidan, post office, the whole works. And I lived there until I was 18 years old.
What are some of your earliest childhood memories from growing up in Rapidan?
Mostly trying to stay out of trouble. I did things that 40-some years later that I'd lock somebody up for. I will tell you one incident that I was a little ashamed of and tickled too. It was a boy down there that was shot down over Germany and was in prison camp over there for something like 18 months. He came back and lived in Rapidan. And on one Halloween night, a bunch of us younger hoodlums got some dynamite. And we went up 15 and set it off a couple times. We come on back to Rapidan, about 10:30, quarter to 11, I think it was. And went out in the middle of a field, about probably 500 yards from where this boy lived, and set off 2 sticks, and it sounded like it Rapidan just rocked. Well, the next night, all those, we usually hung around the store, the general store down there. It stayed open till 9 o'clock at night. We all hung around him, and he came on up there. He said, I had that funniest feeling last night. So I laid in bed, dreamed that we were flying, and I heard this explosion. I rolled out of the bed and I said, bail out, boys, bail out. And I felt real bad about it after I grew up enough to appreciate what we had done. Then we had an old man there in Rapidan that always gave us a hard time. And one of the tricks we pulled on him, and this wasn't very destructive, he had a hedgerow, a bunch of hedges around his house, front door, and had one of these old pull chain lights. And we got a stray cat and tied twine string around his tail and tied it up to that light switch. And we got to the Baptist church in Orange, which was right across from where this old man lived. And we got over there and would holler, hey, kitty, 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 and that cat would run this way and the light come on. Somebody back up here, there was 3 or 4 of us into it, called. And we like to worry that old man to death with that. But he was always after us for something we had done, and this, that, and the other.
What did the hooligan of Rapidan wind up by becoming a police officer? How did that work?
By accident. By accident. And one time we had a hog get loose over there. You talk about a Yuma. And I had this Englishman, you remember Lynn Hill, big blonde fellow? He was an Englishman, came over here, John Baldwin hired him. This hog must weigh 500 pounds. And I got a picture of that somewhere or another. I'm standing there like the Virginia seal with the, standing with 1 foot up on it. Anyway, we chased that hog one morning. It was Lynn and myself. Corralled that hog over on Nelson Street. And I said, now Lynn, don't let him get by you. Oh, hell, me'll take care of him. Well, okay, me take care of him. So I was trying to herd the hog up, and the hog went, rrr, rrr, and started at Lynn. And he ran up on his, oh God, blimey, he says, but didn't know they barked. They didn't know they barked. Well, we finally had to call the animal, well, they called him the dog warden then, but now they call him animal control. Called him and he shot a dart at him, got the hog down, and we threw him on the back of somebody to pick him up, come by with us and carried him back to where he belonged. We found out who owned the hog. But yeah, it was quite a few humorous ones too. He got that place around that back where, we always called it Leggett's Lot, you know what I'm talking about. And came in there with his bully boys with the swastika bands and the brown shirts. I had gone to 2 of the black leaders there in Orange and talked to them, and they were quite a help. And He came in there was every redneck from 5 counties in that lot. And he lit into them. He called them everything that you could possibly on his through his mic. Finally, we had to disarm them. They had machine guns and stuff, and they were true Nazis. There's no question about it. And but we got them out, and I went back and told these 2 people that had helped me as far as the behavior of the blacks were concerned. They could not have acted better. They were called everything under God on God's green earth other than what they were.
Did you have any high-speed chases through town?
Oh my gosh. I wrecked a couple cars. It was a 1964 Ford. And one Saturday night I was working, and I was off. And he came by the office and was bragging about his car. And I said, man, you don't know what a hot car is. I said, come on, take a ride with me. He said, all right, but he said, got to be some kind of hot. So we went on out of town, and just got up there where the health department was. I stepped down on the thing. I was 15, I went. And when I topped that hill going out of town, I was getting close to 120. And when I got out to Gillum's Mill, I was still running about 100, and I turned around. I said, what do you think about that, G.I.? He said, well, it runs. I said, you ain't seen nothing yet. We started back, Phil, and I stomped that thing, and the peg went all the way over past. I think they had 120 on that, something like that. Anyway, the fence posts looked like matchsticks. We came over the hill coming back into town, and here was a carload of hot rodders, some old Chevrolet, turning around in the middle of the road, and here I come at 100 and some miles an hour, Phil. I stood up on those brakes, and up on the bank I went, and turned around like I was going back. I laid down 400 and some feet of skid marks. I knew I had the car falling. I said, gee, what kind of car was that? He said, damn if I know. I said, the only thing that I know is that I smell roses and saw dust. He should have fired me. He didn't. I got a good talking to, but I never played with a police car after that.
I remember one time sitting and talking to you, and you said to me, I've never forgotten this. You said, you know, Orange would be paradise if it weren't for the suicides.
That's the worst thing in the world to work, Bill, because it's bad enough if somebody's child or husband or wife gets killed in a wreck. But suicides, handling that with the families is one of the worst situations that I ever had to deal with. And I did have to deal with several of them over there during my time. I think one of the worst ones, the murder-suicide, was down at the A&P. The Friday after Thanksgiving. You remember that one, I'm sure. One of the employees down at the old A&P had a grudge against one of the others. And it happened one night, it was Friday after Thanksgiving, I forgot what year. And he shot, one of them shot the other one, and then stuck the shotgun under his chin. I always tried to treat people the same way that I'd like to be treated. And I don't know whether I was liked or not when I left Orange, but I do know I was respected. And as far as you liking me, I can care less, as long as, but I wouldn't change anything about my life. I've never been one that was trying to keep up with the Jones. Anyway.
We carried 800 horses to Europe, to Danzig, Poland. Supposedly to plow the fields. They didn't have any tractors. They'd eaten up all the horses in Poland in particular was starving because Russia would come in and drive the Germans out, and Germans would come in and drive the Russians out, and Poland got the hell kicked out of it. And they were absolutely starving, and so they didn't have any tractors. They needed to plow the fields. So they said about half the horses would be eaten. They knew they would be eaten, but the other half could plow some fields. But so I got it on July the 15th. My birthday is July the 16th. On July the 15th, we were out in the middle of the Atlantic, and the captain, there were 20 farm boys. I'd never, only qualifications, they said, do you know anything about horses? And see, I'd ridden a pony a couple of times, and I said, oh yeah, I'm an authority on horses, and that's good enough for us. So I was assigned, it was 20 boys, some of them 14 years old, I think. I was assigned 40 horses on the top side. And they warned us that horses get seasick. I'm gonna give you all a lesson in horses, because in a couple of weeks I'll learn a whole lot about them. And they said horses get seasick, and they told us if they get down, we had 2 in a stall. I had 20 stalls, 2 in a stall, and if they get down, they said call us, because we're gonna throw him overboard, or her overboard, because they said they know they're gonna die. And so I said, damn. And then on July the 15th, my birthday is July the 16th. On July the 15th, the captain said, all right, it was 4 of us on top side. They gave us life preservers and a leather belt with a hook on it and a rope. And they said, we're hitting rough waters probably tomorrow. And we're supposed to hook up to keep from getting washed overboard. And I didn't know anything about that, but it didn't happen. But when the ship went down, spray went all over the place. And but I was so sick I didn't care about the spray. And I was laying on the steel deck, hooked up, about to die, and they opened the hatch, and a cable went down. You know what a boom is? Cable went down into the hole.
Oh yeah.
And they were pulling out horses. Some of them were kicking, and they throw them overboard. And I was so sick that I said, I wish they'd put one around, they attached to their hoof, one hoof. I said, attach that thing to my foot and throw me overboard, because I don't care. I'm so sick, I don't care whether I live or die. Wow. And but none of my horses died. And when we got to Danzig, the captain, we didn't lose but 28. Ship ahead of us lost 400 horses. And captain gave me a verbal congratulatory. I had the best record on the ship. I left Newport News with 40 horses. When I got to Danzig, Poland, I had 41. And I had a quick crash course on giving birth. And so my favorite horse was a white mare. She was very gentle, and we had some stallions on there were mean. I didn't know horses could bite. That's why I was little. And one of them bit me in the back, and the blood was running down my back, and I could feel the hot blood coming all the way down to my legs. And that damn horse bit me in the back, and I took a pitchfork, and I didn't hit him with the tongs, but I hit him in the back part of it, right between the ears. I hit him hard as I could. And after that, he always backed up in the stall when I left. And so my favorite mare was just a little bit up, and she was gentle, and I'd pat her and whatnot, and she was very heavy and thick. And I went by her one day, and I could see her ribs showing. And I said, what the heck is coming off? Well, best horse. And I looked under it. It was about this big, piece of jello, blue jello. I remember, well, about that big, but about that high. And the jello was moving like this. And I said, crazy. I ran up we had an alcoholic veterinarian on the ship, and he was drinking them up with the captain up there, and I ran up there. His name was Kobe Graves. I said, Kobe, my best horse has just lost her insides. And I explained it to her. He said, take this knife and run it as hard as you can down there and cut the top of that skin. So I ran down there. I was, I don't know whether I turned 18 or not at that time, but I cut the top, and about 5 gallons of water came out of that bag. And I ripped it back, and there was a wet colt about that big, soaking wet. And Kobe came up and said, did it drown? Did it drown? And I said, no, whatever it did, I don't know whether it was a male or female, it's still living. And he said, put it up on the deck, and he gave me an old dirty gunny sack. He said, rub it down and dry it off. And he said, move the mare, instead of 2 horses to a stall, I put 3 in the next stall, so that my mare could nurse the colt by itself. And so when we got to Danzig, the captain said we did very well. We didn't lose but 28 horses. They called me a cattleman for some reason in the Marine Corps. I mean, the Merchant Marines. And they said Cattleman Green had the best record. He left with 40 horses and got there with 41. We read, 3 of my friends read that they needed working vehicles in South America. They said you could buy a pickup truck in the U.S. for $2,000, and if you can get it to South America, you can sell it for $3,000. Well, I was 20 years old. We were all 20 years old, and we said that's a piece of cake. So we got the map out, Pan American Highway. We figured asphalt roads and stop lights, and so we went to Bill Early at National Bank of Orange, and first went Danny Schaefer at Scott Chevrolet. Said, Danny, will you sell us a pickup truck? Instead of $2,000, he said, $1,200. And I said, that's highway robbery. We were told you'd get it for $1,000. And he said, nope, $1,200. So we went to Bill Early up National Bank. We each borrowed $300, 4 3s, 12. And Bill Early, the president of the bank, said, you mean you want me to lend you guys $1,200 and you're going to take my collateral and drive it all the way to South America? He said, my board of directors would run me out of town if I did that. And we said, well, we don't have $1,200. You're going to spoil our trip. So he said, well, I got to make a telephone call. So I thought he was going to call the chairman of the board. Came back, he said, it's all arranged. Here's a cashier's check for $1,200. We thought he'd call the chairman. He'd call my father. We didn't know it until after we got back. And my father said, my $1,200 is kind of risky. And we sold it we drove it to Santiago, Chile, and we sold it for $3,000, but they weren't going to pay us. We sold it to a Davis Davis and Company in Santiago. We sold it, but they were going to pay us through Chevrolet and Orange. So we had just enough money to get back to Orange, flying British South American Airways, and so we did. But going down there, it was 8,000 miles, and we had a brand new pickup truck, and we had 8,000 miles on the speedometer, and we went through. I wouldn't let a son of mine do that. And spent the night and woke up next morning, July 6th, was my birthday. And so they said, you got to stop at the famous monument down the road 6 miles. And we said, okay, well, we didn't know what the monument was. And so, sure enough, a great big obelisk, 30 feet tall. On top was a round marble globe about, I don't know how big it was. It looked like about like that, with a stainless steel band around it. And then at the bottom, it said latitude 00.0. We were on the equator.
Nice.
So we put the pickup truck, Chevrolet pickup, with the front bumper in the lower southern hemisphere and the back bumper in the northern hemisphere on the equator on my 21st birthday. So that's how I can remember where I crossed my 21st birthday. So that's the story of my life.